Hi, I'm Paul with MadCap Software. In this video, going to concentrate on different types of breaks in PDF or print-based output in MadCap Flare. So this is something that is unique to print-based output. It's just they're ignored in online output, but when you're creating PDFs and Word documents, things like that, you definitely are concerned about where content is breaking. So I'm going to go through different types of breaks that you can use in Flare. Also going to talk about a couple of different methods because there's not just one way to do it. And I am at the end of the video going to give special attention to some types of content where it's a little bit unusual, a little special, and that is lists and tables. So those are different than just like putting breaks on, headings or in front of or after regular paragraphs. Okay, that's what we're going to go through. Let's get to it. The most common types of breaks are page breaks, and probably everybody knows about those. So you're just telling it where to end the content on one page and then force it to begin on the next page. But Flare also has breaks for columns. So you've seen in this video series, we've used multiple columns. So you can put breaks on styles so that certain content will, move from the end of one column up to the top of the next column. And similarly, there are frame breaks. So we've also looked at page layouts where we had multiple body frames in there. And so content will just naturally start at the first body frame, move to the next, and then the next. So if you have multiple body frames and you want to force content to go from one to the next, you can put a frame break on that. And these are all similar. They have the similar, properties and values for as page breaks have. We're really going to be focusing on page breaks, though, in this. So I'm not going to get into frame and column, but if you understand the page breaks, you'll be able to do those others as well. So common settings on breaks are things like breaking before or after content. That's probably the most common that people use, but there's also inside breaks. So that would break inside the rendering box of the content. And that's something that you would do probably like in a table. And I'm going to talk about tables later. Also, Word, well, also there are settings to always break. So the most common things that you'll choose are, do I want to break it or don't? So usually it's always or avoid. But there are some others. There's auto, there's left, and there's right. We're mostly going to be concerned about always or avoid. I also want to mention that if you're generating Microsoft Word output, they have this idea of sections. And so there are also section breaks, but we're not going to really talk about Word in this video. We're going to focus on page layout breaks, and we're doing PDF output. So we're going to begin by looking at the couple of methods that you can use to create breaks. One is styles. And of course, we always encourage people to use styles, but then there are also manual page breaks. And I actually use both of those. All right, so we're going to begin and take a look at breaks on styles. Okay, page breaks on styles. And you already saw this in an earlier video if you were watching those, where we came into the H1, heading 1 style. And by default, the page break before is set to always. So you're always going to get a page break whenever it comes across content that has the H1 style. Well, we changed it to avoid. So we did this here. So this is our H1, the start of the chapter, and this is our chapter number, which is using a different style and it's in a different topic. And so we didn't want this to show chapter 1 and then there would be all this white space and then it started getting started. We wanted these to appear together like they're on the same page. And so we set the page break before to a void. And in that output, all of our H1s are the started chapters. And so it makes sense to do that. Now, the other headings by default don't have page breaks on them, H2 through H6. The default is it's just they're not going to have them. What I did, I set up, I created another target called test and a TOC to go with that called test. And you can see I just have a few topics in here, the feature topics, and I organized it like this. And I also have a separate style sheet for this because I just want to demonstrate how this works. So first of all, the settings for the page layout breaks, the page breaks and the column breaks and the frame breaks. If you're in the style sheet editor in group view, these are all down here under print support. So you can see, oh, there's the column break after, before, inside, and then frame breaks, and there's the page breaks down here. So right now we are using the default on everything because so you can tell because everything is gray here. So H1 is going to get the page break before, H2 won't, H3 won't. I've also put colors on these different headings so you can tell the H1 is going to be blue, H2 red, H3 green, H4 purple. I just did it on those. The look of the output is going to be really ugly here, but that's okay. I'm just demonstrating this. So let's build this output. Very, very simple. Now it's using our page layouts and things aren't really set up for this. So like I said, it's ugly. There's our TOC. Now this is blue because we haven't changed it. That's using an H1. So there's our H1 and there is a page break before. So it's not, bleeding into this page. And then the reason why we have this white space here is because remember we added this image and it's gargantuan and there wasn't enough space for it here. So it's just there. And then the text just continues. Now here's our H2, no page break before, no page break before, same there. And it goes all the way down. They're all the same. All right, let's make a change. Let's go in here and let's say on our H2, we do want a page break before. So I'm just going to click this, and these are my options, and I'm going to say always page break before on that. And let's rebuild, and you're easily going to be able to tell what's going to happen here. But then after this, we're going to muddy the waters a bit. Okay, coming down, that's the same, that's the same. Now we get into this, the leftover text under the image, but we don't see the H2 and the other content. That's because we have a page break before on it. And the same thing happened here. All right, that's easy enough. But what if you go into your target and you select this use TOC depth option? Because remember here's our configuration. So in this topic, the H1 is going to become an H2, H2 becomes an H3, and so on. So what happens to the page break settings? Well, what happens is it's just going to use the same page break settings of its new adopted style. So we come down here, that's the same. Come down here, that's the same, because this topic was at the, it was on the left. And so it's not indented. These styles don't change. But then the next topic, they do change. So this feature 2 that used to be an H1 becomes an H2. And it has the red color on it. Now, the H2, we told it page break before. So it became an H2. So now it gets a page break. and H2 becomes an H3. We told it to have page breaks on H3, but on H2, but it became an H3, so now it doesn't have one. That's just how that works. Setting page breaks on styles, I always do that if it makes sense, if I'm able to. I always go to styles. But my opinion is there are some times where it doesn't make sense to do that, where it might be better to use a manual page break. Some people might disagree with me. They think, well, you should always have it on styles. Well, let me explain. This topic right here, feature 1. Let's say that this topic appears in multiple PDF outputs, and in some it's at one level, some it's at another level, some it's at another level. So this H1 in here, this might actually be an H2 or an H3 or an H4 in these other outputs. You might end up making copies of the heading and setting one as an H1, one as an H2, one as an H3, and specifically setting the page breaks on those and not selecting the TOC depth so that you have exactly what you set, you know what they're for. But then, so you got 4 headings here, but then maybe some of those headings you do want the page break on and some that you don't want the page break on. You can imagine you end up with this big mess, all these conditioned headings, and some with page breaks and some with not, using the styles. And in your style sheet, you'll have like H1, the one that has the page break, and another class that doesn't have the page break, and same with H2 and H3. You can imagine how hard that can be to maintain. And it's for that reason that if I'm not able to easily use a page break on something, then I might use the manual break. And so far I've been talking about headings, but you can put page breaks, on any of this block level content. You can put it on, paragraph classes or, whatever. So that's breaks on styles. It's pretty easy to see what's going on here and set these. But now I'm going to go into the next section where I'm going to show you how to do manual page breaks if you need to do that. Okay, manual page breaks. These are breaks that you can insert through your insert ribbon in Flare. They're always page breaks. You can't do these for column breaks or frame breaks. They're always page breaks. And it's always going to be a setting of after. So wherever you set this manual page break, it will break after that spot. So let's look at our output in here. So we got this chapter 1, come down here, and let's say that I want to put a page break in front of this H3 between the caption and the heading 3. But for the reasons I explained, I don't want to use styles. I just want to put a manual page break there. And that's going to push it down onto this page here. And then we come down. And so this content's going to shift. And we look at this going, oh, that's going to make this list continue up on this page. And maybe we want to put a page break between this paragraph and basic steps. So we want another one right there. Okay, so let's go in and look at that. So this is the getting started topic where we're beginning here. And so all I need to do, I've got this stuff in a div, and that's fine. You just click, in front of the content, and then you have insert, and it is right there. So the resolution on this is small, so we don't see the text. If my resolution was higher, you would see actual page break here, but it's this little icon right there. So I can just click right there, or I can use my arrow key and go up between these, and I can have an empty paragraph. Doesn't matter. Going to click this and insert it, and you get this bar in here. Sort of looks like, one of those proxies, but you can tell it's a page break. It says it on there. And you'll see that if you have markers on. If you turn markers off, you won't know it's there. So I would encourage you to have your markers on. Now you insert this and it's just going to be ignored in your online output. So if you only have, your conditions are very simple. Maybe you have online only and print only and nothing, more than that. You don't even have to put a condition on that because it's just going to ignore it. So the other thing is, now if I want to insert another one, I can do the same thing, or I can just copy this so that I can quickly insert it somewhere else, if paste it somewhere else if I want. We wanted the other one to be in front of basic steps. So where do we put this? Do we put it here? Well, I actually, yeah, you can. I like to usually put things at the end of the topic, that's right before it. You can do it either way. Let's locate this in the TOC. It's in here. So you can see the getting started topic is right before it. So I could put my page break right in front of that, or I could just go to the end of this topic and paste it after. Either one will work. And let's build our output and see how it looks. All right, let's move down to our topic. There's getting started. So we don't have the heading 3 down there anymore. It moved onto this page. That shifted things. And now we've got this page break that's starting basic steps on the next page. Pretty simple. Now, at what point would you want to put conditions on these things? Because I do. So you might do that. Let's say if you don't just have, a simple set of conditions, online only and print only. Maybe you have those, but you have, dozens or hundreds of PDFs. And you need to keep content separated at that level. So maybe each one of those PDF outputs has its own condition. So we've got the getting started guide. Maybe we've got another one. And on some of those, you got a topic that's in multiple PDFs. So maybe in some it's got the page break, and some it doesn't. And so you just go into conditions and set it there. So that's what you would do. I find that when I'm dealing with headings, and because I'm using TOC depth, and there's topics up here in multiple outputs, I find it a lot of times easier to use the manual page breaks. But for some kinds of content, I find it really easy to use the style page breaks too. So it's really a preference. Use what works for you. Use what is going to result in you doing the least amount of work, really. Okay. Next, we are going to take a look in the next sections, breaks in lists and tables, how those are treated. All right, so breaks in a list. So you can, of course, have the list item using a style, or you can do a manual page break. What you might decide to do is create a generic class that has page break before or page break after on it, so that you can apply it to any of these block level elements. So an LI tag or a paragraph or whatever you want, that might be a good way to do it, so that you're not creating page break before on tons of styles. The thing you need to remember about doing this in a list, from an earlier video, I explained how by default lists will have these paragraph tags within them, which you can take away. They're useful when you have content between steps like this image, but you could make it a simple list item, right click on that and make it like that, so it doesn't have the paragraph tag in it. So whether you're using a style or manual page break, that's true. It needs to be on a simple list item, not one with a paragraph. All right, let's go into our style sheet in here. So I've got my LI, that's the list item, but instead of putting my page break on that, I'm going to do a generic class. So add selector, it's generic, and I'm going to call this page break before. And then I am going to come down to print support and do page break before, always. So I've got that. Now in the basic steps topic, we've got these steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's say we want to use the style. So, and we want a break before step 3 in here. So first of all, I've got to make this a simplified, simple item. And then I can select my, did I not save it all? Okay, so this stumped me for a minute. I went up here to select my page break before option, and I don't see it. And I'm going, why am I not seeing this? So this is why I said earlier in the video series, when you create a new class, a new selector in your style sheet, do it on the default tab, because I happen to be using the web layout here, which is using the default medium. It doesn't know about the existence of that style, and that's why I don't see it. So if I were to switch to print layout, and I'm now using my print medium in here, and I click on this, and now I can select it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to delete this. And so, yeah, I should have clicked on this first. Add selector, page break before, and in here, page break before, set it to always. All right. And now we come back to this, and we're in web layout view, default medium, and now we have access to it. Okay. So sometimes you'll be working in web layout view, but doing something for print, and that's why you want your styles to be available. Okay, so that is one way to do it. Let's generate the output and see if it works. All right, down here, it's in basic steps, 1, 2, page break, and the rest. Now, I probably wouldn't want to do that because that's weird to, have all this space and then the rest continuing, but that's how it works. Now, let's go undo this. And I'm going to put the paragraph item back. So we're going to do this with the manual page break. And one of the reasons why you might decide to use a manual page break here is for something like step 2 up here, where you need the paragraph items in here because you want to put extra content. So let's add a break to the same location in here. So I'm just going to press my arrow key up. And then notice that this structure bar is selected, LI. And if I now press it down, this is what I want. I want it on the OL structure bar so that when I press enter, I get a new line in here. That happened because I've had these, paragraphs and stuff in here. So I'm going to make this a simple item. So I only have the LI. I don't have the paragraph tag in there. I'm going to insert that. So that's how it looks, like that. You also might decide to do it this way if, some outputs you want a page break on a certain step and others you don't. Well, you don't want to repeat the content on that step, and it would just be easier to insert a manual page break. So let's generate the output for this. Okay, moving down to our basic steps. Step 1, step 2, page break, same as before. We just did it in a different way. That is, again, very odd to have all that white space and then the list, but it's all for the sake of education, right? So that is breaks in lists. So now we want to look at page breaks when you've got a table. For example, here I've got my appendix and my big freaking table here, and lots of columns, lots of rows in this. Now, when we talk about this, we're talking about putting breaks really between the rows. I mean, you can put a regular break ahead, in front of or after a table if you want to break things like that, but I'm talking about within the table itself. Now, I'm not talking about if I were to, let's say, like this cell right here, if it had 5 paragraphs in it. I'm not talking about putting a paragraph in the middle or a break in the middle of those paragraphs. So we're talking about putting the page break between one row and another. So look at this table here. I'll blow it up so we make it easier to see. Right here. Okay, so this table, and most of this content is just exactly the same in all of these cells, except once you get down to here, and I have this text, I'm going to add a page break before this table to make it look better. Okay, because obviously we lose this text. There wasn't enough space here, so it just kind of wrapped in onto the next page, and we don't really like that. This just these 2 words here at the end hanging by themselves. So what we want to do is add a break right before this row. Now there are a couple of ways to create these table breaks. You can try to do it just in your regular style sheet, or you can do it in a table style sheet. I think it's going to be easier to do it in a table style sheet. So I'm going to create one of those, and we'll set the page break option in there. So I've got my snippet open where I have this table, and here is that row in here. Now this table, if we look, it is using a table style. Actually, is it using? So I applied this table style to it just now, this alternate row. Okay, so one column is light, or one row is light, the next row is darker gray, and so on. It just alternates. I'm going to create a copy of that table style sheet, and I'm going to actually change it so that all the columns, it's all the same color. It'll just be easier to illustrate this. So I'm going to make a copy of that table style, a table style sheet, I should say. And I'm going to rename this plain page breaks. So it's a plain kind of table, not real plain, but sort of plain, because it just doesn't have the alternating rows in there, row colors in there. But it is relatively plain, and we are going to add the ability to have page breaks in here. So I open up that table style sheet, and we look on the rows here. Now it's got 2 rows, and this is where you get your pattern. So the first row, you can sort of see this light gray set on the background color. And if I select the second one, it's got a darker gray on that. So it is set that the first row is going to have the light one, and it's just one row, and the second one will have the darker gray, and then it'll just repeat. I could change this to 4 in here, and so the first color, the light color, would be the first 4 rows, and then it would go to a darker gray row, and then back to 4 lighter gray rows. So that's what the pattern allows you to do. And notice that each of these have pattern set in here. Well, I'm going to change the second row so that it's what we call a custom row. So we're only going to have one pattern with the light gray. The second row, I am going to rename this to page break. That's just what I named it. You can name it anything. And I am going to set it to custom. So it's only going to use that row if I manually tell it to in a table. Just one row in here. Now I'm going to use the same color as this light row, which is this. I'm going to copy that hex number, go to my second row, go into the colors, and I'm going to paste that in there. So they're both the same, and you can tell what's going on over here in the preview. Okay, so Unless I tell it otherwise, it's going to just use the pattern. Now, the last thing I need to do is set a page break for this row. That's how it knows what to do. So I'm going to scroll down to print options. And here's where you can set these. You can do page, column, or a frame break. And I want the page break. So I'm going to set before to always. Click OK and save it. Okay, so now I'm going to come back into my snippet where I've got this big old table in here, and I am going to right click on that table structure bar, and I am going to, instead of using the alternate row color table style sheet, I'm going to use this plain page breaks style sheet. So now everything is just that light gray. So if I were to generate the output, it would look just like, it did before. Yeah, because I hadn't applied that table style sheet, it wasn't using the alternate stuff. So it would look like this, and I would still have the problem with this just kind of hanging out over into this page. So what I want to do is come down to that row. I'm going to right click on the TR. So you click in a row and you can see the tags associated, and TR is table row. And I'm going to right click on that, come down to row style, and select page break. That's the name of that custom row that I gave it. So now we'll rebuild and we'll see what happens. Okay, let's come down here and we can just click on our appendix to quickly go down there. And here's what we have. So all of these are the same, but we don't get that one at the bottom of that page. It comes over here and it starts on this page. So we easily got a break in there, and you wouldn't know otherwise that that's a special row. It just looks just like all of the others. And as I'm looking down here, I probably would want to put a page break on this row right here, because you can see how you're just ending up with one word in there. And then coming down here, that one looks okay. This one, I would put a break there. So that's what you do, is you kind of see how the table's coming out in the output, and then you go back in and you choose what rows to set your break on, and voila, you got it. So we've pretty much completed what we set out to do at the beginning of this video series. We got our mock-up, and we were able to replicate it and also add some images and resize those and do some breaks. The last video coming up, this is an important one, and it shouldn't, be that long, but it's going to show you the benefit of all of this work. We spent a lot of time and effort to get all this stuff set up, and we don't want to just, use it on one PDF if we can use it on lots of them. So we're going to go in and take a look and see how we can really quickly and easily create additional PDFs using the foundation that we created. So I will see you in that last video.